foremost, thank you so much, Khalil. Am I saying that right?
Yep.
Thank you so much, Khalil, for hosting this. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm a former atheist, and I had a religious conversion some time ago. But going through that, becoming a Christian, I totally understand why people have doubts about faith. And so my channel, which is Respect, Humility, Empathy Podcast, RHE, we interview people from a variety of backgrounds, and we just have conversations. And I usually have an atheist co-host, and we're not here to argue or try to prove ourselves right. We just, want to have some conversations. Mm-hmm. And actually, thank you so much, Ephraim. He's actually joined us 3 times, so I really appreciate that.
Cool.
And Ephraim, where are you calling out of?
I'm in Jerusalem.
All right.
I'm in the Jewish neighborhood or Madashkol.
The Holy Land. So if I'm going to ask the first question, Khalil, I would like to know if you could tell me just a little bit about your conversion and how you became a Muslim yourself, like within 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So for a long time, a lot of the followers here, subscribers here have seen some of the videos that I did on Thought Adventure podcast, but basically I was a hard atheist making a positive claim that God did not exist about 5 months ago. Wow. So I recently had gotten in touch with some Muslim philosophers, the Thought Adventure podcast guys, a couple of the guys who host with me as panelists on this show every Saturday. So I talked with these guys for about a year because they were just philosophically handling people left and right. They were just throwing people around like rag dolls. And I said, hey, I need to bring these guys down a few pegs and show them that they're wrong. So I dove into really studying Islam and trying to figure out how the very fundamental nature of their God just could not exist. And after about a year going back and forth with them, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't find out how to prove it wrong. And not only that, but the very concepts of the God of God of Islam actually solved a lot of problems that I had with other God concepts. So at the end of the day, I ended up being convinced that Allah is real and that Islam is true. So I ended up taking up Islam, taking my Shahada.
Okay. All right. And really quick, Ephraim, I know you've told me, but just for the listeners, can you tell me your particular background with Judaism?
So I grew up what we call ourselves Haredi Jews. We are, I guess in English people call us ultra Orthodox, which is it's like I guess like a traditional form of Judaism, which we keep the law, but we also have our own distinct culture. Meaning, there's Orthodox Judaism that Jews who try to keep the law, but they might be part of Western culture. We sort of try to separate ourselves from Western culture. The specific group that I grew up in we call ourselves Yeshivish, which means our religious life is based around Torah study and religious seminaries called yeshivot. And I myself joined Hasidic groups, which is a different type of ultra-Orthodoxy. And today I live mostly as a Hasid, as a Hasidic Jew.
I know a little bit more so about Judaism, obviously, as being a Christian. Mm-hmm. But could you explain to me, from your perspective, what are the biggest differences between Islam and Judaism and Islam and Christianity? If you wouldn't mind.
I think there are less differences between Islam and Judaism rather than Islam and Christianity. I feel like as if me and Ephraim would be closer theologically than yourself and me. Because we have the concept of oneness. Like obviously as a Christian, you would also say that you have the concept of oneness, but I find the concept of the Trinity very problematic. I find some models of the Trinity ending up falling into what's called polytheism or tritheism. Not all views. So I don't want to generalize the Trinity into a polytheistic view, but I do know that some models that people claim of the Trinity do fall into that polytheistic framework. So I do know that when it comes to like marriage and things like that, that as a Muslim, if I was not to be married already and have to find a wife, I could marry a Muslim woman, a Jewish woman, or a Christian woman. So even though you are Christian and you're committed in Islam, you would be committing what's called shirk, which is associating partners with God. So having Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit added to this group and calling that God, that would be considered shirk. With Ephraim, that he has the oneness of God in the same sense that I do.
So, but Khalil, you said that you could marry or. Why not marry the Christian, the Muslim, and the Jew? You guys could get away with it, right?
Yes. So, I mean, we can do that.
That was a joke. In your mind, what do you think the biggest differences between Islam and Judaism are? And for the record, let me preface this. Khalil posted this video, the thumbnail, and someone who had, I don't know his name, but he said that Christianity and Judaism are not Abrahamic religions. So I guess implying only Islam was.
Okay, so I would agree totally with Khalil that if I'm pronouncing that correctly, that Judaism and both Judaism and Islam are much more like absolutely monotheistic. Like God is one, and one is like in the simplest sense. And we would both say that the idea of a Trinity, or the idea that God has could become a person, or could become part of this world, or that he could like exist in one place and not another place, are blasphemous for us. We would totally call it polytheistic. The difference is that in a certain sense, in Judaism, there's this concept that Judaism isn't a world religion. It's a religion for our group, for our tribe, so to speak. Like if you're part of the covenant, then you're obligated to it. And otherwise, you're not obligated to it. Unlike Islam, which is a world faith. It's a faith which wants everyone to believe in that one God. So in other words, for a Jew, I would look at a non-Jew and say, I want you to believe in one God. Now, if you don't believe in absolute oneness of God, that's okay for me as long as you believe in one God. So I would see a Christian, I would say, listen, I don't agree with your idea of what it means to be one, but as long as you believe in one God, I'm okay with you. But for a Jew, we would say, no, a Jew needs to believe, within a Jewish faith, a Jew has to believe 100% in the oneness of God and no sort of not making him material in any way. So therefore, in a certain sense, we would look at Islam as a much pure form of monotheism, of faith, but we wouldn't necessarily feel that everyone needs to be like that. So that I would think maybe, yeah.
So Ephraim, though, you have a lot more experience than either Khalil or me, because you've studied this a lot more in depth than either of us have. So what would you describe as the biggest difference between Islam and Judaism? And then Khalil, if you could answer that question too, please.
So I guess one difference is that Judaism, like I said before, Judaism isn't a religion with a message to the world other than there is one God and you should behave properly. There's not necessarily a concept of we want everyone in the world to join the covenant and to accept upon themselves the whole Torah with all of the rules. We have no interest in that, and it's not part of our faith at all. We believe it's like our nation a couple thousand years ago was chosen by God to have this to live by these teachings and to live by these rules, and that's our family or tribal religion. I don't know what's the best word for it. National religion. Yeah.
The difference that I would see between Judaism and Islam is pretty much exactly like our brother over here said. That Islam is like a religion for the entire world. And I believe that, you know, with Judaism, there's a specific group of people. God has his chosen people. And those are the one that he has set the example for. Now, obviously, in the Bible, God does get upset at his chosen people at a few different times, you know, within the Torah. But I would say that the issue, the difference is that in the Torah, in the Bible, we as Muslims believe that there was corruption, that there was corruption to the book. Especially when it comes to like in my last debate, I was using Jewish arguments for the different types of ways to atone, and the way that the Jewish people would say, well, sin sacrifice is not exactly what the Lord prefers. He would rather prefer repentance and charity and a broken heart. And there's things like that to where many of the prophets in the Old Testament came out and said that clearly, and then it seems as if there was corruption later by the Christians to try and say, instead of, you know, ears we have opened up, it went to a body has been prepared for you in Hebrews, and there's things like that. So I think the difference between Judaism and Islam is one, that they have a chosen people instead of just for everybody in the world. And two, we believe that Islam is the only Abrahamic religion to where the Holy Book itself has been perfectly preserved.
What has been the response from atheists since you were associated with the atheists? What has been the response to you since you converted to Islam?
So there's been a multitude of different responses. So one, I still have many of the atheist friends that I had before. Many of the followers that I still have. But I also have received death threats. I've received,
Wow.
you know, people have been saying, well, here's the thing, Khalil, you were smarter than me. I looked up to you. I watched your channel. You helped me deconvert from my religion. And,
Wow.
you know, I basically took everything you said completely to heart. And now you're not a atheist anymore, and you've gone to a religion. So now I'm questioning my own beliefs now as an atheist. So how dare you leave atheism and go to this religion, especially a religion as violent and horrific as Islam?
Yeah.
And I've received that a lot. I've been called a pedophile sympathizer. I've been called, you know, a terrorist, saying that I'm chilling with ISIS now, and all kinds of stuff. So I mean, there was a positive reaction, but there was also a giant negative reaction. That was a very big eye opener when it came to like these people claiming to be humanists and saying that the Jehovah's Witness were, you know, a guy came on my show and he said, well, he left the faith, and his wife and kids, she divorced him and completely, you know, ejected herself and her kids from his life just because he didn't believe what she believed. And these people in the chat were like, well, that's just horrible. How dare she do that? Like, why would she do that? That's her family, just because he doesn't believe in what she believes. And then I do the same thing and have a different belief than these people. And these same people are like, I'm no longer associating with you. You are disgusting.
Wow.
You've gone to a religion.
That really goes to show and everyone's hypocritical. Jews, Muslims, atheists. We're all equally hypocritical. But this side of atheism, they claim to be more enlightened. They claim to be more tolerant. But if you express an idea that's different from theirs, for example, I was in one of their Discord, probably one that you know very well. And I was just asked my opinion. I didn't go in there expressing that and how to do with trans issues. I didn't go in there attacking anybody. That's not what I do. I have conversations, but because I was asked about it, I expressed my opinion, and everybody came in dogpiling me, saying some very abusive things about me. And that just goes to show that you know, if you have a dissenting opinion, that is not always tolerated. Just to respect that you have a difference of opinion. But you know, that being said, I do want to bring up something, because obviously for the things that we do have in common, and this, you three us three would probably go out and have a drink. I don't know if you guys could drink, but I could drink. But we could probably go out for a meal and have sit down and have a nice, decent conversation over coffee or Coke, whatever it might be, whatever you would like to have. But do you think there's still some animosity though between, maybe it's from the recent past or the distant past, that like for instance, Ephraim and I have had some conversations about like anti-Semitism, and I have a cousin who's very anti-Semitic, and for me, I can't even understand. That doesn't even compute inside of my head. It doesn't compute why I should hate a Muslim, or I should see you guys as enemies. As a Christian, I would say this: when you guys talk about like the Trinity, and that is kind of like, I mean, it is a bit confusing, but for me, it's like obviously we see ourselves as monotheistic. You guys might see it as, I understand why you would get confused by that, because it's actually confusing to us. But that being said, I do want to say, yeah. So what do you think is it like, because we all believe that we have the right form of like the Abrahamic religion, like there's like the competition there? Would you say, Ephraim, like why is there some kind of animosity?
I'll take an argument which you probably hear from an atheist, that the truth is, if you look into the holy books of all three of our faiths, you'll find, for sure in the Torah you'll find it. As far as I've seen quotes from the Testaments about it, and I believe the Quran also has all different types of comments about non-believers and what to do to people who leave the faith, or people who idolaters. You look in Deuteronomy, and you see that Deuteronomy is full of get rid of the idolaters, and what should you do to the idol worshippers. And so I could understand that somebody who takes their faith very, very literally and very, very like religiously, it is something which you have to work on. I think that to come to recognition that that other faiths are saying the same thing. So I think for a Jew, sometimes I could, at least like the experience that I have, so a lot of Jews won't look at non-Jews in a negative way, because like I said, we don't have an expectation that everyone should be Jewish. But let's say we might think, well, they all hate us, so therefore like we don't like them, we're scared of them. And it changes in every generation. I would say like 400 years ago, the average Jew would say, oh, Muslims, they love us, we love them, we're great with them. And Christians, oh, they're trying to kill us, and they hate us and this. And now today it's usually the opposite. I think has to do a lot with politics. Like 500 years ago, the politics of the world were that the Christians were trying to whatever, and now the politics of the world is switched over. But it's not like something essential to. I think like a Jew might persecute or hate a fellow Jew who doesn't follow the faith. You might feel worse about him than a non-Jew. Like a non-Jew, I think an average Jew would feel like as long as you get along with me, I can get along with you. But there's like something in him that thinks like, yeah, like Christians, they might be nice to me today, but you know what his ancestors probably did to me. And so you have to like get over that. You know what I mean? Like you have to get you have to like get over that. Like just because you're in Europe and the people over here, their ancestors might be, it doesn't like right now, 2021. The guy in front of me is a nice guy, and he likes me. I like him. We get along with each other. Then let's just live. And the same thing with the Muslim. Just because it's politics today in the world, and which happens to involve Jews and happens to involve Muslims, that doesn't mean I don't think it has to be intrinsic to it. You can look past that. Yeah.
So either of you have any questions or any comments, please. I don't want to be the person driving all this myself, but Khalil, I think I told you, whenever I was an atheist, I actually went into Israel, and I went into Palestine.
Okay.
And I actually stayed at a mosque for like a week there. And these guys were so nice. They were so welcoming. They were so gentle. I can genuinely say before God that these people were the most hospitable, nicest people I have ever met in my life, genuinely speaking. Okay. So that being said, how do you how do you think, Khalil, like we can respect not only people who believe differently, but also the non-believers? You know, the either people of other faiths or just people who have no faith at all.
Mm-hmm. So here's the thing, and here's where I come to within my belief. And Ephraim, if you see I'm muting, I just see hear a little bit of background noise with like kids playing or something. So I'm just muting you momentarily until you come to talk. So I just wanted to let you know that.
By the way, that's officially called a Darth Dawkins. What he's doing to you.
Yeah. I actually talked to Darth the other day, and I maybe got 20 seconds into a conversation, and then he cut me off.
I heard it.
Oh, you went to okay, you heard from Tom Rabbit. Okay, yeah, so as a Muslim, I think that we are fallible humans. I think that we are either given the truth in a convincing manner or we're not. So in Islam, there's something called a kafir, and I'm sure Ephraim knows exactly what I'm talking about with a kafir. Hold on, wait a second. Let me unmute you.
In Hebrew, we call it kofir.
Yeah, kofir. Yeah. We have kafir and kufr, and kufr just means unbelief. Kafir means someone who has been.
Definitely put him on mute though, because the sound.
Yep. So in Islam, a kafir is someone who has been given the truth of Allah, who has been convinced that Allah exists and still denies Allah. So, like for example, Pharaoh in Exodus. Pharaoh at the very end realized and he knew that Allah existed, but he still went with his ways. He still rejected God. And that's called a kafir. And that's one of the very few people that do spend an eternity in hell. So on the other hand, there are some people that, live their lives and they're simply just not convinced that God exists. Mm-hmm. And when they go to Judgment Day, Allah realizes that they were genuine in their heart, that their intentions were there, that they truly wanted to know the truth, but they were confused in some sort of way and basically didn't gain a proper understanding of the existence of God or the existence of the God of Islam specifically. So God will show mercy upon them. So it's not really my job to really put other people down of other faiths, or trans or homosexuals or anything like that. People are living their lives. We all have free will, and I want everybody to be happy. Obviously, I would love everybody to come over to Islam. That would be fantastic. But the true reality is that that's not going to happen. So while we share this space, while we share this planet together, let's just be compassionate towards each other. And if you end up believing, then great. If not, that's more it's outside and over my head. It's more of something for Allah to deal with.
So, Ephraim, just to give you the inside joke, what we talked about, Darth Dawkins, he is a Christian person who gets on there and debates people, and he drops F-bombs. He cuts people off. You get like one sentence in and he'll cut you off. And then if you dare cut him off, though, he gets so angry and he will mute you. And so that's why I said you can't mute anyone whenever you in this podcast, because it's just a little inside joke that we had, because I just said, obviously there's some stuff that we're not going to agree on. Like, I don't even agree with myself all of the time. All right. I some days think one thing and some days think another thing. And there's things, if I look into the Bible objectively, I got to say, this seems pretty messed up. Like, this certainly is not the way I would do it. I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but it's not like I present Christianity as being 100% flawless and you are 100% full of flaws. It's a learning process. I'm learning. I've only been a Christian 7 years now, but that's a question I want to get to you, Ephraim, is like, how can we respect people and still respect their rights to exist? What are your thoughts on that?
I think I agree with Khalil that there's, in a certain sense, we each have our faith and we each take our faith seriously, but somebody else who has a different faith, um, I don't see why, like even within our own faith, it's not just like Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Within each of our faiths, there's you could divide it. You could have
Right,
Protestants and
right, right,
Catholics, you have Shiite and Sunni, you have Hasidim
right,
and
right.
Yeshivish, and we each and every person is an individual, and every person is a different has a different personality. Like we say in Judaism that everyone has his soul has a different root. Like if your soul is rooted in this type of thing, then you'll end up being you'll end up emphasizing in your Judaism certain things which you might not, other people might not. Like you might take the more emotional part of Judaism, and other people might emphasize the more intellectual part. Other people in the more ritualistic part, or the more. Every person takes whatever according to his personality and his upbringing. So, and I think you could take that even further. Somebody who didn't grow up Jewish at all, and he has a different, or he didn't grow up religious at all, then
Mm-hmm,
he's made differently than me. His
mm-hmm,
personality is different
mm-hmm.
than me. His whole way of viewing the world and processing the
Wow.
world and feeling the world is different. So, um, the same way I would say to a Jew that's different than me, that I understand that
Mm-hmm.
his way to God is different because he's different. He's built differently, or she's built differently. For some people, their path to God just makes more sense through Islam, or other people, their path to God makes sense through a certain type of Protestant Christianity, and not. And so I don't see why necessarily there's a saying in Judaism, the same way no two faces are the same, no two personalities are the same.
Mm-hmm.
So like if we're not all expected to have the same exact face, why are we all expected to have the exact same
Mhm.
face?
Yeah. Around 10 years ago, I met a Muslim guy here in South Korea, and he was staying with me. And I was an atheist at the time, but he was like, God, probably the most liberal Muslim I've ever met in my life. I mean, he is bald and didn't have a beard or anything like that, just super extremely liberal. And he wound up explaining something to me, which I thought was fascinating. But let's just take this as an example right now. I'm in South Korea. It's night. Khalil is just waking up, and Ephraim is just finishing his workday. So we're at 3 totally different times of the day right now, right? And so the way that we're able to receive light is different, you know. And as you're talking about, just our own personal personalities and this and that, um, we have different. We're in different seasons of our lives as well, you know. Ephraim has like 10 kids actually. I just had my first daughter, and I'm not sure. Khalil, do you have children?
Yeah, I have 5 kids.
Wow, wow. So you're like halfway. Just like you got small, medium, and Ephraim's the large.
I got them ranging from 4 years old to 14 years old.
Wow, wow. Lucky man. But you know, so we're at
I
different
guess you could
stages,
say that.
different stages and different. Yeah, you. Oh yeah,
You could also say stressed.
yes sir, yes sir. So, but you know, I do want to. So I do want to transition to something else right now because, and I do want to preface this by saying you are American, right, Khalil?
Yeah, I'm a white boy from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay, okay. So I'm Mexican and I'm American. So being Mexican, we have some kind of like beef with our government because there's been some atrocities committed against both Mexicans and Indians, or Native Americans. I'm sorry, which are our ancestors. So there's a lot of grievances there, but when I take a look at the situation objectively, I might make a claim against our government or Vietnam or the Cold War. I might say something negative about our government, but it doesn't say. Um, yeah, thank you, Saria, for her, whatever who's Saria. She said this is
Yeah.
being very respectful. Well, it might get a little contentious right now because this is where I'm going. So don't get carried away. Because I might make a claim against my government or because I live in South Korea, I might make a claim against the Japanese government because they've committed a lot of atrocities here in South Korea. Okay, but it doesn't mean that Japanese people or American people I have any kind of beef with. Just in the same way as what's going on in Afghanistan right now, I may think the Taliban or they're nuts or whatever, but that doesn't mean that I certainly don't hate Muslims. I have nothing against Afghan people. So the same thing with Judaism. I was actually accused of being an anti-Semite because I had worn an Israeli flag X'd out to protest the destruction of Palestinian homes, and it's crazy enough, like KKK members and like Muslims were like all celebrating me because I guess they thought I was anti-Semite, and I was like, no, that's not at all the case. Like I was making one protest against one act and said nothing about the people. So that being said, I do want to say, do you have any idea, any thoughts about the Palestinian conflict, like some possible resolutions for that, Khalil?
So I don't know much about it. Like it happened like right after I converted, and to be completely honest with you, philosophy I'm pretty well versed in. But history and like geographical issues, I'm a complete idiot. Like I didn't even know that there was an issue with Israel and Palestine until just a few months ago. Like I had no clue. Right. So I learned a little bit about it. I found myself like a third party website that was, I hope, as non-biased as possible, and kind of got a little background on what was going on with the conflict between Israel and Palestine. And what I did see mostly was that there were bills that were trying to be passed at the UN. And basically, it was a possible solution to the problem. So it may not have favored all parties, either Palestine or Israel, but it would have definitely, hopefully, put a suppressor or put a stop to the violence that's going on in Israel and Palestine. But it seems as if the one country that kept saying, nope, I don't take it, and it had to be a unanimous vote, was the United States. The United States was constantly saying, nope, we're not doing that. And I think that's like Ephraim said, it has to do with politics. It has to do with economics. It has to do with trade and basically allyship. I think it has a lot to do with that. So, I mean, I just wish everybody would get along. I think that it has something to do possibly with, Israel trying to regain like the Holy Land for prophetic reasons. I'm assuming. I could possibly be wrong, but and I can understand why they're doing that. I just what I looked up, it seemed as if over the last 70 years, Israel has been inching, taking more and more land from Palestine. And that's really all that I really know about it. So I don't really know how to put my true opinion into it, because if I do, I feel like as if I'm just being biased and rooting for my side just so I could root for my side.
Right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that honesty. And Ephraim's probably going to have a lot more of an input on this. So Ephraim?
Yeah.
You're on the
Okay.
docket.
So like if you look behind me, that neighborhood. Okay. Wow. That neighborhood is called Ramat Shlomo. If you look up in the news, around 11 years ago, all those houses which you see over there were approved, I think, in 2009. It approved 1,500 apartments over there, and it threw a huge international crisis on approving 1,500 apartments. So that's why it took like I think now it's like 12 years, and a lot of them are finished, a lot of them aren't. Why? What's wrong with that neighborhood? Because this particular neighborhood during the years 1948 till 1967 was under Jordanian rule. It was a Jewish neighborhood before 1948, and then 1948 the Jordanians captured and expelled all the Jews. In 1967, Israel captured it again, and then the Jews moved back. And now instead of now now they're considered settlers because under international law, it wasn't acknowledged that they. So like this is just an example of how complicated things are over here. Meaning, as a Jew in the United States, I could move wherever I want, and no one has issue with wherever I move. But here in Israel, if a Jew moves anywhere, it's considered that he's encroaching. He's like taking land away from somebody, even if he's like moving into the apartment that his grandparents like lived before the 48 war. That's just like it's so that's not like I'm not trying to give like a whole explanation for the whole conflict. It's like I was probably giving half hour, an hour. I give like a very very basic.
Right.
Yeah, but my point is that it's very complicated over here. It's now, just like for Khalil, I just want to point out Israel's a secular state. It is not a religious state. I mentioned this a few times in Isaiah. Judaism, like we said, there's a religion called Judaism, but it's a national religion. It's a religion of a nation, or a nation in exile, or not in exile anymore, or however way you want to look at it. That whether or not you keep the faith, you're still Jewish. You're Jewish the same way someone else might be Mexican, and someone else is Korean, and someone else is ethnically whatever he is. You're ethnically Jewish, whether you keep the faith or not. Now, Israel is a secular state in that it was made by not religious Jews and it's run by not religious Jews. It just got the first like religious prime minister was just appointed a few months ago. Who's the first time in the history in the 70 plus years of Israel that there was actually a religious prime minister. Not all Jews who live here are even Zionists. The Zionist project has nothing to do with the Jewish religion. It's a political project. It's sort of like a Black Lives Matter. Imagine like a Jewish Lives Matter, which actually succeeded, and like they ended up like actually succeeding and saying, you know what, let's stand up for ourselves because everyone's killing us, and let's just like stand up for ourselves and protect ourselves and have our own army, our own land, because no one's standing up for us. No one kills it. No one cares if we get killed. So we might as well take care of ourselves first. And it ended up being there's a lot of history how it happened, but and what happened. And I personally not a Zionist. Most Haredim and most ultra-Orthodox Jews are not Zionists, but are not Zionists at all. And I live in Eretz Israel. I live in the Holy Land, which happens to be run by the Israeli government. But even if it would be run by a different government, it would also be great, as long as it's a safe place for Jews, for Jews like me. So a resolution. So yeah, that's just like to give a little background of what's going on. Yeah. So I how to resolve a conflict, I don't know, because on one hand you have a lot of Muslims who live here who have this part of the Muslim faith, which I understand from them, is that like land which was once politically belonged to Islam can never afterwards become a Christian or a Jewish land. So even though, let's say, Muslims in Israel have equal rights, they're equal, they could be elected to government. Like there's a Muslim party which is part of the government coalition right now. You go, most pharmacies over here, the pharmacists are Arabs, Muslims. You go to doctors are Arabs and Muslims. And
what about the bankers?
What?
I'm just kidding. That was a bad joke. I said,
what
about the bankers? I said, what about the bankers?
Oh, the bankers.
Bankers.
The bankers. The Jewish, yeah.
Bad joke.
The doctors and the lawyers and the bankers. So my point is that exactly what are you going to do over here if I as a Jew, I'm called a settler because I want to go live in a neighborhood across the street, which no one was living. It was no man's land, it was a Jewish neighborhood up until 1948. It happens to be the Jordanians went and kicked out everyone from that neighborhood, and 17 years later, or 19 years later, whatever it is, I'm not good at math. Then Jews came back they're now called settlers, and they're stealing Palestinian land, which means they're taking back houses where they themselves lived in, or their parents lived in. And they're called settlers, and they're making international incidents. And so it's like a complicated. It's like I don't even know how do you resolve such a thing. It's basically like live and let live, and everyone just it's a. I'm sorry for condensing like a very, very complicated subject.
I do want to preface this with a lot of care, because I have now interacted with Muslims in about a dozen countries. Okay. So I went into, for example, Kosovo, and you go into a mosque there and everybody is white. You're like, you can't even believe it. You're there with a bunch of white guys with blue eyes and blonde hair. And you're like, wow, you have this ridiculous idea that every Muslim is from the Middle East, when the vast majority of 70% of the Muslims don't even live in the Middle East, right? So I've went into, like, for example, Turkey, where there is 99% Muslim population, and literally I walked into a gay rights like demonstration, and you see women there walking around. Some of them are dressed with the head to toe in black, and some of them are wearing mini skirts, and some of them have their nails done, some of them are wearing scarves, and then some of them aren't wearing anything, just walking down the street. So I've seen a variety of different Muslims, and I'm telling you, one of my best friends here in South Korea is a Muslim. Maybe not the most devout Muslim, but I mean, we sometimes go out for a beer or two, but he has absolutely zero beef with me or Jews or anyone else of any faith. And but that being said, all that prefacing, we obviously, we couldn't have a conversation without addressing an elephant that's in the room, which is some of the more extreme and abusive elements, even though they're like the 1%ers, right? They're the 1%ers that give everyone else a bad name. It's the same thing with the cops, or blacks, criminals, and then everyone starts stereotyping because as of that. So I want to know, what are your thoughts on that? And one thing that atheists will say about people like you, or say like it's the moderates who help enable this, because you seem fairly moderate, and I'm a fairly moderate Christian, but they'll say that whenever we stay silent, we help enable this, the more abusive elements of our religion. So if I see someone like Darth, for example, and this is mostly just with words, but he was attacking Oz in a public forum, and I came to Oz's defense, and I said, "This is you're misrepresenting what kind of person Oz is. Oz.
Yeah, Tart, Oz Tart. Yeah, he's a good buddy of mine.
Art.
Oz Tart.
I'm killing this. I'm butchering this, but I said, that's not right. You're giving an accurate representation. And another form of, on Tangelo.
Yeah, I was just talking to him the other night.
Dude's a little out there himself, but he was hosting a StreamYard, and one of the Christians in there was viciously verbally assaulting an atheist guy who was having a conversation. He was explaining some stuff that I didn't understand, but he was attacking him, and I called him out for it, and he started calling me then he turned in on me. So I think we got to, as a Christian, I cannot stay silent when I see like the Trumpsters who are abusing Muslims and calling Muslims terrorists and going after them, or whoever it be. If it's my cousin who's anti-Semitic, I cannot stay silent. So how do you reconcile like your faith with some of the more abusive, extremes, the 1%ers? I'll call them the 1%ers
in Islam. Yeah. So what I do is I openly condemn them. I openly say that any type of terrorist attack or any type of Muslim that thinks that going around killing people or going around and talking down to other people and judging other people, and telling them what they believe and how they're, it's I find it to be disrespectful, because it's up to Allah to judge us, right? And if you're going to go around judging everybody, you are pretending to be God. And if you pretend to be God, that's what we say about polytheists, is that they're associating partners with God. So if you're going to be a Muslim and also do that, you're kind of working against yourself. Your position is somewhat self-refuting. So I would openly condemn any Muslim that says that we should be bombing people and we should be doing this and that. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. So I mean, I'm a very liberal person too, and I'm still working through some of the moral implications, because I was a big fan of the LGBTQ movement.
I know you got to go because he got to get back to his 20 kids. But if you could give us a quick last thought about just any last thoughts you want to say, and then Khalil and I will keep talking for a while. And but if you could give us your last thoughts, or tell us anything about we were talking about terrorism and kind of like, and even I know even inside of Judaism, there's like the abusive elements as far as Zionists. And so, can you tell us your thoughts on any of that?
So at least when it comes to Judaism, then I honestly don't feel, I feel like it's like not connected. So let's say I'm Haredi, like I said, ultra-Orthodox. So I don't care at all. I don't think it's important to me at all. The let's say the religious Zionists, they're a totally different group. They're a different group, and they have ideas which are mostly, I guess you could call them political, and they somehow fuse politics with religion. But it's not like I feel like they're on the spectrum, the same spectrum as I. I feel it's like a different political party, which they also happen to be Jewish, and they also happen to be religious. But I don't feel it's like, oh, this is like a further expression of my Judaism. Honestly, I don't know how it works in the Muslim world. I don't know if I don't know Islam well enough to understand if Muslim extremists are just a totally different group which has no connection whatsoever to the regular mainstream Muslim on the street. In the same way that a religious Zionist who, for example, there are religious Zionists who do have this like concept like they have to go live everywhere in the Holy Land to try to reclaim land and things like that. I look at, okay, so you have this like political agenda, and you like to mix religious terminology in your political agenda. Like, why does that have to do with me? Like, I don't have that political agenda. Like, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm sorry.
No, I apologize before if I spoke a little bit too sharp about the conflict. The Palestinian conflict. Yeah.
I don't think you said anything out of line.
Yeah. Okay.
No, we definitely have to have a round two. We know you got to go right now, but I would love to have another talk with you guys. That's one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten, that we've had such a, no one's cut each other off. No one's raised their voice. No one's said anything disrespectful. Obviously, we have some different ideas about some things, but we can express ourselves but still respect each other, So
absolutely.
Ephraim, thank you so much for your time.
In the end, we couldn't avoid the car.
Say it again?
No, so far, every time Isaiah interviews me, I end up in the car sometime in the middle.
Yeah.
This time I waved.
Anyway, shalom, Ephraim. I appreciate your time.
Okay, shalom.
Yeah, okay.
I'll see you later, Ephraim. Hope we can have a round two.
Yeah, all right.
I love it.